Recently, my girlfriend and I broke up. It was a mutual decision because we both felt that things just weren't working out between us. Our relationship had only lasted for about a month. During that time, one thing that always stood out to me was her temper. She had a tendency to get angry quickly over small things, and it made our time together challenging at times. After we parted ways, about 2 to 3 weeks later, I received an unexpected text from her late one evening. She expressed a strong desire to talk and asked me to meet her at a nearby park at 10 p.m. This park held sentimental value for us because we had visited it together before. Nestled by the woods, it had a serene and peaceful ambiance that I always enjoyed. I wasn't sure what she wanted to discuss, but I suspected she might want to reconcile. However, deep down, I knew that I didn't want to get back together with her. As I walked to the park from my house that night, the air was warm with a gentle breeze, creating a tranquil atmosphere under the dark sky. Upon arriving at the park, I texted her to let her know I was there and asked where she was. She replied that she was waiting for me in a secluded corner near a picnic table, close to the edge of the woods. I made my way over to the spot she described, but when I got there, she was nowhere to be seen. I called out her name, but there was no response. Just as I was about to call her on my phone, I heard rustling leaves behind me, coming from the direction of the woods. Turning around, I was startled to see a large man wearing a ski mask emerge from the shadows. He towered over me, easily over 6.5 feet tall. Instinctively, I turned to run, but before I could get far, he tackled me to the ground with surprising strength. I tried to fight back, but his size and aggression were overwhelming. He punched me repeatedly and threw me against the ground, causing pain to surge through my body. In a matter of moments, he forcibly took my wallet, phone, and keys. After subjecting me to further blows, he fled into the darkness, leaving me battered and in shock. I lay there for a moment, trying to gather myself and comprehend what had just happened. Despite being bruised and shaken, I managed to pull myself up and make my way home. Thankfully, my injuries were minor, though the emotional toll was significant. Unable to access my house due to my stolen keys, I sought help from my neighbors, who promptly called the police. I recounted the harrowing experience to them, and they immediately launched an investigation. A locksmith had to be summoned to gain entry into my home, adding to the ordeal. Through their investigation, the police eventually identified and apprehended both the man who attacked me and my ex-girlfriend. It was revealed that she had orchestrated the entire scheme, luring me to the park with the intention of having me robbed. While justice was served with their arrests, I unfortunately never recovered my stolen wallet, keys, or phone. As a result, I had to go through the inconvenience and expense of replacing them. The incident left me deeply shaken and wary of trusting others, especially those who might exploit vulnerability for personal gain. It served as a painful reminder of the importance of being cautious and discerning in relationships and interactions, even with those we once cared about deeply. Last year, my girlfriend and I broke up. We dated for a couple of months, but she was just way too high maintenance for me. After we broke up, she continued to call me though. I let her know that I was not pleased by this, and I asked her to leave me alone. She would keep calling me and texting me, and eventually I had to block her. Fast forward about a month, I got home from work one day to find one of the front windows to my house was smashed. Shattered glass was everywhere. I thought someone must have broken into my house. I walked inside, ready to defend myself. The house looked normal and nothing was messed up though. I walked through the house one room at a time to find that there was nobody else in there except me. Nothing appeared to be stolen either. I had to get the window replaced, which costed a lot of money. Then, about a week later, I left my house one morning to go to work. When I got to my car, I saw that all the tires on it had been slashed. Now I knew that these two incidents had to be connected, and I immediately suspected my ex-girlfriend. I ended up unblocking her and accusing her of the incidences that happened at my house, but she never responded. I had to get one of my friends to give me a ride to work. I reported to the police the things that happened at my house. That night, I woke up to hear the sound of glass breaking. I thought to myself, here we go again. This time I was pretty angry, and I got up and ran out to my living room to see another window completely smashed. I ran outside to see if I could see anyone, but there was nobody there. I called the police and told them that once again one of my windows had just been smashed. They said they would send someone out. When they showed up, they examined the scene and asked me some questions. Then they began to look around my house. The officers went down to my basement, and when they came back up, they had my ex-girlfriend. She had broken in and was hiding in my basement. I didn't even know she was in the house, and I assumed she left. It was a big relief to know those things would not happen anymore. I'm just glad the police found her in my basement, because I don't know if she had plans to harm me or not. It was terrifying to think that she had been hiding there all along, watching me and waiting for the right moment to strike. The whole experience left me shaken, and it took me a long time to feel safe in my own home again. I had to install a security system and take other precautions to ensure that nothing like this would ever happen again. I hope that she gets the help she needs and that no one else has to go through what I did. A couple of years back, I dated a girl named Christine. We dated for about 5 months, then broke up. We split on good terms and even remained sort of friends. When I say that, I don't mean that we hung out or anything, but we occasionally would text and see how each other were doing. I was glad that there were no hard feelings between us and that things were fine. One day I received a text from her. She told me how she was moving, and there was a gap in the leases of her apartments and some other complicated stuff. She said she needed a place to stay and asked if she could stay at my place for a couple of days. I was a little hesitant, but being the nice guy that I am, I said yes. I thought it might be kind of awkward, but I figured that I would be working most of the time and I wouldn't have to talk to her much. When the time came, she arrived. We talked briefly, and things seemed pretty good. She was staying on my couch and I would sleep in my bedroom. I went to work, and when I came home that night, we talked again very shortly, and then I went into my room. I hung out in there for the rest of the night. I went to bed at around 11 p.m. I usually sleep really well, but on this night I woke up and could see that everything was still dark. I closed my eyes to fall back asleep, but I felt as though I wasn't alone. I remembered that Christine was staying with me, and I looked up to see her standing at the end of my bed just staring at me. She had a really mean look on her face. It was like a look of hate. I asked her if she was all right. She didn't answer me. She just stared at me. I sat up in bed, and she backed up a couple of steps. I asked her again if she was all right. She then turned and calmly walked out of the room and shut the door behind her. I was pretty confused by this situation. After a while, I was able to fall back asleep. I figured she was sleepwalking, but I didn't remember her ever mentioning it when we dated. The next morning before I went to work, I told her what had happened in the night. She seemed very surprised and said I had to be joking. I asked her if she ever sleepwalked. She said that no, she did not sleepwalk and never had before. I just didn't know how else to explain what had happened. I thought maybe I was dreaming the whole thing, but it just seemed way too real, and I had never dreamed anything like that before. I just knew I was awake. The next night, I once again woke up in the night. This time I sat up and looked at the end of my bed again. Nobody was there. I was relieved. And then I looked around the room. Then I saw in my doorway Christine's head peeking around the corner, staring at me once again with a mad look on her face. She was just staring at me for a while. We made eye contact and then she backed away. I sat there just staring at the doorway for a while. After a couple of minutes, her head appeared again, just staring at me. Then I called out to her and she once again backed away and shut the door. I didn't get much sleep for the rest of the night. Thankfully, that was the last night that she stayed at my place, and she left first thing in the morning. Before she left, I told her once again what had happened, and she seemed very surprised again. To this day, I have no idea what she was doing,